attendees. I am Shamaila Chaudhry. I'm the president of the American Pakistan Foundation. I'm dialing in from Washington, D.C. I'm so grateful for our guest speakers and also our attendees for joining us from all over the world in different time zones. I think that the diversity of this audience is a testament to the kind of importance of this topic and to the fact that this topic goes beyond just, you know, geographical borders or political borders. It's something that's really important to all of us. And the future of higher education in Pakistan is something I've been thinking about for some time. I had spent 6 years working at Johns Hopkins University, and we were very interested in building partnerships with universities in Pakistan. That's how I met Dr. Ahmad. And so this is really exciting for me. And I just want to recognize Dr. Saleem Ali. He is an esteemed professor of environmental science at University of Delaware. His research focuses on environmental conflict resolution. He has a glorious bio. I encourage all of you to read it in depth. He is part of the APF President Circle as well. And in that capacity, he has been working with us to develop a stronger focus on the research of Pakistani academics and academics of Pakistani descent and researchers in the United States as well, and exploring ways that we can build bridges and alliances, and also just to amplify the great work that's being done between our two communities in the US and Pakistan. And APF has a really strong platform to do that digitally. And so we want to be available here to help do that and serve as some good connective tissue. And one final point is that APF is very multi-generational. So we have, as is the diaspora, as you all know. So we have a lot of folks in our community who are coming into school and looking at careers in academia. They're looking at building relationships in Pakistan. And then we also have a lot of established academics too. So we want to foster this cross-generational collaboration as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Saleem to introduce the idea of the event and to talk more, and he will be our moderator. Thank you so much, Saleem, for all your dedication to APF. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shamaila. It's a pleasure to connect with all of you, the participants and the panelists. So we are trying at the American Pakistan Foundation to launch a network of Pakistani origin academics in the US. And through that, we're doing a research spotlight series, short 7-minute videos of research that is being done by Pakistani Americans. And we're also trying to host events which are topical and relevant to some of the pressing issues of our times. And so this is actually the inaugural event with reference to this academic network that we're establishing. And we're really delighted and honored to have 3 distinguished panelists whose bios in repeating those online, but suffice it to say we have coverage in terms of experience in higher education across the board in Pakistan. So the format that we're going to follow with reference to this webinar is a bit unusual perhaps for some of you. We call it a lightning round conversation. And what we're going to try and do is ask 3 questions which have been pre-screened with the presenters to make sure that they're comfortable with them. And those questions are going to be addressed in sequence, and each presenter will have 3 minutes to respond to those questions. So we'll go on for about half an hour or so through that process. And then we'll have about 20 minutes from the audience also to engage through Q&A. All of the engagement from the audience will have to be through the chat and Q&A feature of Zoom so that we can multitask and be very efficient with our time, because our panelists are extremely busy individuals and we want to make sure we maximize their floor time. So I'd urge you to please put your questions in the chat or Q&A feature of Zoom. I'd also like to note that we are doing this event in English, and that is not in any way to denigrate our own linguistic heritage in Pakistan. All the panelists are indeed very fluent in Urdu and could very well perform that task. However, English is very purposefully being chosen as the medium of exchange for 2 reasons. One is that we're engaging with the diaspora, many of whom are more fluent in English, but more importantly for higher education in Pakistan and indeed globally, English has become very much the dominant language. And that is, in essence, one of the points of contention at times. But even in countries like China, higher education is being much more cultivated in English. So I want to clear the air on that, because often when I engage with Pakistani audiences, there's always, this sense of a concern that there is too much of an elitism around the language. So rest assured, we're just as proud of Urdu, but we're doing this in English very purposefully for those two reasons. All right, so let's then get started. Our panelists are going to be given the first question, and I'm going to go in sequence, and maybe I will amend a few things here and there, given the particular backgrounds of the panelists with reference to the question. The first question we have formulated is, how should we balance quality and quantity of higher education degrees production in Pakistan? And what metrics are best suited to measure progress in both domains? So we're talking about the quantity, the number of PhDs or masters which are being produced, as well as the quality of the masters. And the same is true for those who are sent abroad by the HEC to attain those credentials through the scholarship program. So that's the first question. And I'd like to pose that first of all to Dr. Sohail Naqvi, who has experience of having been the executive director of the HEC, as well as having served as Vice Chancellor of LUMS, and is now the Vice Chancellor of the Central Asian University, which is a major project of the Agha Foundation. So he has this cross-cutting experience. So I'd like to pose it to you, Dr. Naqvi, first, because that may also stimulate some responses from the other panelists, given your experience.
Thank you, Saleem. That is a question that we looked at very carefully when the Higher Education Commission was formed in the year 2000. Subsequently, a strategy was formulated. And as a background to the strategy, we looked at the number of Pakistanis that were employed or a part of the higher education sector. Here it is important first to define that the higher education sector means post-12th grade education. And it does not only mean university. It includes colleges, and it includes different formats. It includes open education, it includes virtual education, and it also includes qualifications. So that means that it can be a 6-month course, it can be stackable, it can be micromasters. Everything that comes with a background of 12 years of school is included. When Pakistan started looking into higher education in early 2000s, we had hardly 2.5% of the age cohort, 17 to 23, in universities or in a part of the higher education sector. This was disaster because we are looking at our competitors, and in terms of progress, countries that are looking at 90% of their cohort in this age group. So quantity was definitely a key concern. Together with quantity comes the issue of quality. So therefore, when the strategy was formulated, it had 3 pillars: access, quality, and relevance. Access tackled the issue of quantity. In terms of quality, what you have to define are standards. And those standards are the structure, the framework. So the entire framework of higher education was changed, in that the bachelor's degree was made a 4-year program, the master's degree was made into a 30-credit hour, and essentially it followed the US system, while the PhD program was a 3-year program with 18 hours of coursework and then everything else that was required. Together with that, the standards specified what other criteria you had to meet. Once you specify the standard, you have to specify what is the mechanism of meeting and assuring that those standards are met. So accreditation councils, mechanism of peer review. One thing is very clear: you don't measure the quality of a university through the opinion of anybody. No matter how learned they are, you don't measure the quality by the opinion piece that they write. You measure it by what scholars say. You measure it, where do the scholars end up? You measure it, what their productivity is, and you measure it to see if they have seen and been appreciated and recognized by the accreditation councils. I finished 3 minutes, so I'll stop.
Thank you so much for keeping to the time and the very incisive response there as well. Now, turning to Dr. Samina Qadir, the same question, but I would also urge you to address the issue of the major gap we have with reference to women education. And since you were leading Fatima Jinnah University as Vice Chancellor, maybe you can also add some dimension to that in terms of, the need for Pakistan to catch up with the rest of the world in terms of improving our productivity of higher education for women, but also making sure that the quality and employability is there too. So over to you, Dr. Qadir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that the issue of access for women, I think, has been quite successfully resolved in the sense that we have now 14 dedicated women universities in the country, which has resolved a number of problems. But even if you look at the co-ed universities, in the public sector universities, the women population is almost 70%. It's only in the private universities that women are between 25 to 35% and men dominate there, because on merit, boys don't get admission into the public sector universities, and parents are more willing to pay for their sons to go to achieve higher education through the private sector. Now, one part of the question is answered, and I think Dr. Sohail Naqvi addressed one part. Another part of the issues that I had in mind is the college education. In Pakistan, we have about 200 universities, but we have 2,900 plus colleges which are offering higher education. And higher education has been defined by Dr. Naqvi as anything that is beyond tertiary education. Now, Pakistan has adopted through HEC the system of offering 4-year undergrad degree in all the colleges. The master's programs have been eliminated. My big concern is that there is going to be another class segregation or another divide in the society for students who are going to universities to get their 4-year undergrad degree and who are going to get it from the colleges. Because there is no monitoring, no evaluation of the teaching quality of the curriculum is prepared by HEC, it is recommended by HEC, but the best curriculum, if given into the hands of an incompetent teacher, I'm sorry to say that, will go waste. So we have not carried out any kind of orientation or foregrounding before starting the system of the 4-year undergrad degree program, especially in colleges. So the quality of education is going to be a big question mark, because the teachers in the cities may be more aware, in the bigger cities, in the central cities, but in the provincial cities, in the peripheral cities, there is no awareness of semester system, of grading for semesters and how it is going to be done. And I'm sorry to say that the provincial education departments have no capacity or vision or expertise to oversee this. So I think the ball again falls into the court of HEC that how are we going to monitor this? We have started this, but what is going to happen is quite lackadaisical at the moment. So I think I've also taken my 3 minutes and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Qadir, for perspective also coming from the public sector, but also you shared important demographics, which many of our audience might not know about. So thank you for being so precise on that. Now, turning to Dr. Ahmad, who is the Vice Chancellor of LUMS, that prides itself quite rightly so as being one of the premier private universities of Pakistan. The same question, Dr. Ahmad, as an academic who has worked in Canada and now in Pakistan, could you share some perspectives on the quality-quantity divide and how to measure it? The second part of the question was about measurement.
Thank you. First of all, very grateful to Shamila for inviting me, and really pleased to be with our colleagues this evening. Look, we need a 3-hour response to an excellent question that you raised, so we can only touch on a few points here. You know, it's a summertime now and officially, I think all over the, in some hemispheres, and you know, what was and then what do you call it? You know, 2 bases to get to home. Quality, you know, access is a laudable goal, as Dr. Naqvi was saying. Every country on earth wants to have as many people as possible in the system, in the tertiary and higher education system. But I think in Pakistan, we have it backwards. We went for access first, and we should have gone for quality first. Quality always precedes quantity in any domain, in any venue, whether it is commercial products or whether it is research, teaching, and what have you. So, you know, it's like, I'll give you a very simple example in education, of course. Take a teacher asking a student to write a paper, right? And the student, instead of writing the one paper, submits 10 papers. And you say, well, look, quantity is great. I'm going to give you a passing mark. You did 10 papers instead of one without reading any of them. And I think the same can be flipped. And you ask the professor to write a paper, and the professor writes a paper. Instead of writing a quality paper, he writes 15 bogus ones, which is what's going on in Pakistan, generally speaking. The quantity has just completely overshadowed quality. And why is quality important? It's because of merit. It's all the underlying assumptions we all make is that, you know, for the academic enterprise to flourish, you have to think about productivity in terms of merit. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a proliferation of universities, which is what we have. We used to have, I think, 30 universities before HEC, something like that. Dr. Naqvi would know the numbers, I don't. But now we have something like 225. And look, every country which we look up to and we say we want to catch up with them, Canada being an example where I spend most of my life, which has, by the way, the highest access rate in all OECD countries. It didn't happen in 20 years. It happened in 300 years. Or if you look at the United States, it happened even longer. You look at Europe, it happened over 1,000 years. You can't leapfrog into a business by taking shortcuts and build these universities with, you know, a handful of professors in them. You've got the university, but you don't have the biggest asset in there, which are faculty members. So faculty are sparse, and the ones that we do have, the quality quotient is actually quite laughable in most of the universities. I hate to say that, it's not the case everywhere, but majority, that is the situation here. So we don't have to cry and lament about that, but there is quality being produced in some universities, and those are the ones that we need to keep an eye on and model our future directions in that manner.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. I think you have made a provocative assertion there, and I wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity for a response as well if the other two panelists have some. I think in principle they agree with you. It becomes more an issue of pragmatism. So Dr. Naqvi, what would be your response?
Yeah, I don't agree. And for the simple reason that statements have to be supported by evidence. So as far as scientific publications are concerned, the universal metric for that is is it peer-reviewed and is it published in a proper journal? And what is proper, that the world has also agreed with. You have impact factor journals, or you have some other measures, but you certainly have a list of journals in which the world is publishing. Now, for me to comment on what is, you know, a paper on earthworms written from somewhere would not be appropriate. I'm going to simply look to see if the appropriate experts have said that. Secondly, we just saw the Times Higher Education ranking, and you know, congratulations to Plums for making it among the top young universities of the world. But there are 16 Pakistani universities that are ranked over there. So there is a lot of good work that is going on, and the question is always look at the evidence.
Okay, the metrics part is important, and making sure that we're consistent. Okay, if Dr. Qadir, if you do not have any additional comment, I can move on to the next question, which has to do with, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to engage with this primary question again in the Q&A. The second question is the perceived hierarchy between applied and pure science on the one hand, and natural and social science on the other, is a constant challenge for developing countries. What is the way forward in Pakistan's universities and research centers in this regard? Is prioritization in order at some level with limited resources? So we're talking about prioritizing both natural science as well as applied science. Many times that's how it's framed for developing countries. Or should we be making sure that we cover the full gamut? So for that, I would again like to go through the same sequence if that's okay. So Dr. Naqvi, over to you first for this question.
Thank you. That was a policy dilemma that we faced when we started HEC, and we looked at, how are we going to go about disciplines? And priority number one was given to engineering because we are an underdeveloped country, and applied sciences would then, be considered a priority. In the first 55 years of Pakistan's existence, there was hardly 5 PhDs that were produced. There was essentially no master's degrees. And I'm not talking long time ago, I'm talking early 2000s. And then, so the second priority, then we went after agriculture, then medical sciences, then looked at the basic sciences. And this is how we actually went through it. We also recognize the importance of humanities and social sciences. But ironically, even though the funds required to launch humanities and social sciences programs are much lower, there is a huge dilemma involved in that we couldn't find the people to send for PhD studies in the humanities and social sciences. And the reason was of the very weak background at the bachelor level. So until you fix the bachelor degree problem, and it took time to percolate itself, you couldn't find the people to send out. The other thing is that in humanities and social sciences, you ask tough questions. Just ask Dr. Arshad the kind of time or the kind of questions he has to face in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. They are pushing the envelope over there. When you have a lot of those people, it makes government uncomfortable. There is a third problem with humanities and social sciences, and that is of language. We are people who dream in our mother tongue, and we learn in another tongue. We don't have the opportunity to actually do higher education in the language of our dreams. And that impacts us, that tests us, and that does have a specific impact. However, you have to make hard choices. You have to decide what are you going to do. And that is where the applied sciences come in, because you are giving a skill that immediately goes to work. So we sent 1,000 people for PhD studies in IT. Today, we have $2 billion of exports in the IT sector in Pakistan. That was a conscious choice that had to be made because of the realities on the ground. Also, where the future of Pakistan lay in terms of the number of people that we had. If you could give them high quality education, you established the accreditation councils in computing education, you made sure that there was good quality all around. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naqvi. So clearly there was a prioritization done there. Now, Dr. Qadir, with reference to especially women's education, often this becomes an issue that Pakistan has been remiss in STEM education for women. And clearly there is prioritization that's culturally happening there. How would you respond to this question, especially with reference to this challenge?
Actually, once again, I would like to say with the creation of gender-specific universities, the issues are being resolved as far as women education is concerned in sciences and applied sciences. And all these universities are offering degrees in IT and in engineering degrees, which are accredited degrees recognized by the Pakistan Engineering Council and all that. My problem is that we have not focused on the humanities and the social sciences in any way, in the sense that we have forgotten what is the base of this knowledge. Knowledge creation comes through philosophy or some kind of a theory, and we are very sadly lacking in this philosophical insights. We have discarded the discipline of philosophy. I wanted to introduce philosophy as a subject in the university and couldn't find a teacher for 2 years. So we have to think, we have to prioritize that philosophy is the mother of all knowledge. And we have to go back and we have to the social sciences need a major shakeup, because somehow in universities they have less priority, there are less scholarships, and the teachers get into their comfort zones, and they do not want to go beyond that. There is no new knowledge creation, there is no critical thinking that we teach, and there is not any kind of knowledge dissemination. You know, we are trying to stay within our own little silos and just be comfortable there. And once again, the reason are the colleges. The colleges, because they are the feeder institutions, and Punjab University has 300 affiliated colleges. They can't make any changes in their syllabus or curriculum because they have members on the board of studies from the colleges who resist it. So it is the teaching methodology. There is no interaction amongst the teachers and the students. There is no emotional contribution. There is no insight into the problems of the students, what the challenges of the times. You know, we are still sticking to the old teaching methodology and the old curriculums. We are not introducing new skills, new competencies, new things that the students need to learn and become knowledge creators and sort of progress with that. So this needs a very major shakeup. And we have to do this. And again, in publishing, you know, there are hardly any recognized journals in the social sciences. I'm from the field of linguistics. There is not a single X category journal in Pakistan. So we have to look elsewhere for publishing, and then it becomes a mad rat race. And we have to think about that, how we are going to build this sector, because if this sector is strong, the social sciences and humanities are strong, we give the society, the fabric of the society will change. They are the ones who bring changes. The discoveries and inventions are very good, but insights are required. The social fabric requires social scientists. So we have to think about it very carefully and prioritize it.
Thank you, Dr. Qadir, for alerting us, of course, to the importance of the humanities and the bedrock of all knowledge, which is philosophy. And I should add that in terms of pedagogy, this is an area where the diaspora, the Pakistani American community, may be able to also help, because we have a lot of new experimentation being done with teaching methods, and many of us in academia who are able to provide that. This would be something that we can do as a follow-up for our research network with APF. Now, Dr. Ahmad, turning to you, of course, LUMS was established by businessmen first who had a vision for broader Pakistani literacy in various areas, and a very pragmatic approach. There was prioritization done at LUMS in terms of the kinds of schools which were first established. How would you respond to this question, looking at the evolution of LUMS and where things are headed next?
Gee, thank you, Saleem. You're right. LUMS was established primarily, it was only a handful of people who started the business school. And still a lot of people think LUMS is a business school. But in fact, our largest school is the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, both in terms of the revenues it brings in, the number of students there, the number of programs, and the excellent quality that we have. I would argue that this is an amazing phenomenon. People are voting by their feet and choosing that. It's not by accident we have the biggest school to be humanities and social sciences. And I would say that, yes, they should be pushing the boundaries as they do. Occasionally, we have some topics that are uncomfortable for people in the state or others who have conservative views. But by and large, I would say 95% of the time, they are really pushing the envelope and creating the kind of discourse that we need. Skills are all good. Science is amazing. We need it. We need technology. We need engineers. We need doctors, the professions. But professions, remember, historically, were always at the periphery. The heart of the university was from the social sciences and the humanities. And I think we're losing our way and forgetting that if people can't read and write, the skills don't come very handy in the long run. So this obsession with skills is good. But at the same time, आप evidence का पूछ रहे हैं, तो just go and look at any organization, doesn't have to be in the academic system. Look at the writing skills, presentation skills. पढ़ना लिखना नहीं आता है तो फिर skills की क्या, science की क्या बात हो रही है? I think we need to get this thing right first, do the if you want to learn what other developed countries have done in terms of having an impact on a population like ours, which is humongous with such a huge dividend from the youth, you've got to get this right. So the point about social sciences, I would still say, I think globally this is an issue and they need to be given all the attention that they deserve. One last, I don't know if I've lost my minute. I wasn't keeping count. Do I have another minute?
Yes, certainly. No worries. We're doing very well. You've all been extremely punctual.
Yeah, I'm sort of racing on. I usually don't speak that fast. But the point about centers in your question is an excellent one. Because you see, centers are typically hidden in a school or in a department. Kisi ke paas koi grant, somebody gets a grant and then they run with a center. Now, at LUMS, we have 19 centers, but we made some choices. And what we did was we said, what happens if we unify the disciplines and ask people to work together in these centers to work on national issues? We have a problem with water scarcity. We have a problem with energy. We have a problem with climate. I mean, we have grand challenges and these super wicked problems that are extenuated in developing countries like ours. So the universities have to play a role by, really uniting, working together, and centers, I think, is the answer. So what we've done is to move all the alignment and direction of the center with the university. So they report to the provost, they do not report to the dean. And this is a major change for any university anywhere in the world. And this is, unifying the disciplines. And that means that universities have to do their part to be able to work together.
Indeed, yes. So there is a question in the chat, which I will pose now, even though we want to get to the third question, because I think it's very relevant. One is that in order for any field in Pakistan to be successful, it needs to be monetized in terms of the success of the students getting jobs. And so education becomes a very instrumental activity. It is not in itself an intrinsic value activity as much as it might be in a developed country. So how do you monetize the humanities in a way whereby people are able to see that? I think in the social sciences, economics is monetized very well because of the consultancies from the World Bank and the development donors, which many of, but apart from economics, the social sciences and especially humanities are not monetized as well. Any quick ideas on that point? Any of you, let's just chime in impromptu on that one.
Well, what I'll say is that while the applied sciences, they get all the, bad press and everything like that, in terms of what people who work in the field and who have been successful in their lives, if you go talk to them, the importance of humanities and social sciences is overwhelming. So in fact, it is these philanthropists, the ones who can create a waqf or an endowment or something of the sort, they have driven the protection of basically development of human knowledge through the ages. And if the universities have systems to tap into these people, there are resources available. And then it's a question of just resources, because humanities and social sciences at the end of the day needs a quiet atmosphere, a pencil and a piece of paper, and an access to internet. So those are possible.
Indeed, yes. So it's actually that the monetization issue with reference to investment is much less also for humanities as compared to a startup with the lab. Dr. Ahmad, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to go in another direction and say, look, at the end of the day, we are caretakers of our youth who go out there and make a difference in the world, right? That's what generally speaking, our business. So when we talk about, skill sets that, and ways of thinking, critical thinking, there was a study done, I believe, in the United States, that it was a longitudinal study to see if you start off, if your first degree is social sciences and humanities, you actually end up earning a lot more than any of the professionals, engineers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, put them all together. It's the social scientist that goes ahead in the longer run, because their windows are much broader, and the doors that open for them later on, they are a lot more mobile, in terms of adaptation, agility, resilience, and so on and so forth. So I think depends on the view you have of what contribution people are going to make down the road in civil society, as citizens, and in productivity. And so you can use all the kinds of measures you want, but I think a society that is developing, that does not understand that the core of all our dispositions is really rooted in a liberal arts education that comes from the humanities. So let's just call a spade a spade.
That's great. Actually, you alerted me to a recent philanthropic gift that Johns Hopkins received. The philosophy department of Johns Hopkins received a $20 million gift from a Wall Street alumnus who credited his philosophy major at Hopkins for his success at Wall Street. So it's interesting that there can be that connection made quite empirically. Splendid. Dr. Qadir, would you like to add anything? Should I go to the third question?
I just want to add one little thing, and I think Dr. Naqvi also alluded to it. It is the language barrier. It is the language barrier because all our knowledge is in English. And students who do their social science, they have the option to do social sciences in most of the universities in Urdu. And that creates a big hurdle in the job market because all top interviews in the civil society and in the armed forces are conducted in English. So language becomes a very big barrier in monetizing social sciences because our students are not proficient. We as the Fatima Jinnah Women University conducted all our master's programs in English. And I'm proud to say that 56% of our Islamic studies students are also in the job market, because they had proficiency in English. And that creates a very big difference. This is how the society operates.
Indeed, yes, that goes back to the point I made at the start. Whether we like it or not, regardless of the colonial lineage, English is very much the lingua franca in our times. And countries, even with great linguistic nationalism like China, are recognizing that as well. Moving on to the third question, and this is more an administrative question for now putting on more of your administrative hats. And this is around, some of these that have been happening in the HEC. And the question is, are there specific suggestions for how HEC's administrative structure or position within the government should be changed to improve its efficacy and resource base? And Dr. Naqvi, of course, you have served in an administrative role at HEC as executive director. So you know the history there. And now there are proposals for a change. There have been changes made in terms of the administration. How might you see as the ideal setup for the HEC?
Thank you. Well, I was part of the original team that formulated the law for HEC. So it's obviously something that I take ownership of and feel very proud of. To understand HEC, it's very important to understand the management principle of separation of governance from management. The commission itself is the governance structure. The chairman of the commission is a chairman of the board. It's a non-executive position. In Pakistan, we just love to actually meddle into doing things. So the chairman of the board wants to be the chief executive, and that's what the classic dilemma always comes to. The chief executive of HEC is the executive director. So when I was there for eight years, and Dr. Attad and Dr. Ghari were the chairman. There was never any question of interference in hire this person, do this, go to that project. It's a question of the commission meeting to decide policies and defining the overall agenda of growth of higher education in the country. Second is, how does the HEC function itself? And here, the universal model of the management and governance of universities is that you strengthen the institution. What does HEC know sitting in Islamabad? What is going on in, let's say, Dhodial or any other small town in Gilgit, in remote communities? It doesn't. It has to work to strengthen the institutional structure, and it has to strengthen the universities. And the LUMS is going to be governed by its board. So the role of HEC is in terms of standards and in terms of building the capacity for enhanced quality of higher education. Now, you can't do that if you yourself don't know what higher education is. So you can't do that if you are not a higher education specialist. So inside HEC, there were 9 positions of specialists at different levels that were created for quality assurance, for learning innovation, for pedagogy, for IT, for research, etc. And specialists were hired for that specific purpose. You know, proper people who knew what a research grant is, how to manage research grants, what is a travel grant, and all of those kinds of things. HEC's role is not to run the university. It is not to get into them. It's not to micromanage them. Nothing of that sort. But the power comes in that I could, you know, force Samina over there and say, no, you hired this person, or, you know, this course is wrong. And that is where the problem started to occur. So it's lost its way, but the original model is still correct.
Great, thanks for that history of HEC's intentions and how perhaps it may have lost its path a bit. So Dr. Qadir, with reference to the administrative changes that are proposed, any specific suggestions from you on what could be done looking forward?
I think the thought and the creation was on the right foot, but gradually things started disintegrating. The tenure track system should have been a great success story. It is still a success story to some extent, but recently, I mean, things have come to such an extent that people are losing interest. And I have seen that the HRD policies that were implemented by the HEC of training faculty, sending them abroad as incentives in foreign scholarships and all that, people have come, done their 5 years of the bond, and they are leaving because there is a disillusionment with the system, and which is a very great setback for universities who are losing their trained human resource, who are going to Dubai or elsewhere because they are disillusioned with the system. Dr. Sohail Naqvi has given an insight into the structure of the HEC. There is one thing I would like to ask also is that there are regional centers of HEC in all the provinces like Lahore, Karachi, and Peshawar, who should have a more purposeful role than just offering hospitality to the faculty or becoming sort of stopgap training site venues for other universities or colleges or faculty development programs. We have to empower people to participate in HEC and become stakeholders in HEC. I should feel that I am empowered to be a stakeholder in the HEC and not the other way around. So I think we have to think about what is going wrong where. So to understand that why is the faculty becoming disillusioned? It is happening in FJW. You have seen women leaving and going away, completing 5 years and going away because they are disillusioned and not staying in Pakistan. It's not. And then there is this great divide with the public sector and the private sector. I'm a public sector. I've worked in 3 public sector universities of the Pakistan, and there is a completely different ethos there. The micromanagement which has come in, either it is from the Department of Education or it is from HEC. I think that is also creating dissatisfaction among the faculty. So HEC has to rethink its role and its power structures. The quality enhancement cells are doing a good job. The tenure track system was, I think, a feather in the cap, but somehow it has become tarnished. And we have to see why.
Right. Yep. Thanks for very specific suggestions, Dr. Qadir. Now, building on that with reference to the tenure track system and some of the ways in which the quality control role of the HEC has been operationalized, Dr. Ahmad, how would you see this moving forward from the private sector's point of view, where you have tried to be very meritocratic in terms of how your faculty are managed?
Well, as Dr. Naqvi was saying, the role of HEC is very different from what it has turned out to become. So I don't know what he experienced when he was the VC here, but in my experience in the earlier years, I was just told, stay away from them as far as you can. And whenever you want to fast track a program or something, then you'll have to go and see this person or that person. I think it's only in the last few months that a lot of us have come to know what really is going on at HEC and what has gone on. And there is a massive misallocation of resources there. And the micromanagement, the kind of bureaucracy makes a case study to write cases. So, it's a point where the admission criteria are set by HEC. The curriculum and semester system guidelines come from HEC. Who will teach, who will get a promotion, who gets hired, journals approved by HEC. How many teachers in a department, HEC. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The level of infringement, talk about autonomy, which was a goal of HEC, and look at the way it operates. So it's night and day. I think the closer you come to HEC, the more you realize this has got to completely be, the institution itself has to be redone from the ground up. So there's talk of devolution with the 18th Amendment as well, that you devolve this to provincial jurisdictions. Maybe that's the way. I mean, I'm not, I don't aspire or ever wish to get involved in these kinds of bureaucracy, especially in a country where this is a problem across the board, not only in higher education. But the good news is that despite this, you have great examples of universities thriving, although they are in a significant minority. But for what we see right now, there are too many bureaucrats that are too entrenched that even someone recently in the last 2.5 years who've tried to initiate some reforms, you can see the reactions from those entrenched bureaucrats who are creating this havoc with this ordinance and trying to kick out the person. It's just really shameful. So I think you can have some sensational storytelling here, but the fact of the matter is that the commission, what it was intended to do, is not even close to realizing the model that was set up. It's just wavered and gone on the wayside, and it needs to start up from the ground up, from scratch.
Great. Yes. So clearly that we're at a real milestone where we need to think about a fork in the road. Which way is the HEC going to go? There seems to be consensus that less micromanagement and finding some pathways whereby we can have more creativity at the grassroots, at the level of colleges and universities as well. Now, there's been a lively exchange, thanks to some of the panelists engaging with the Q&A already in the chat. That's exactly what we had wanted. But there are a few questions which we can now take at the plenary level and talk through them. So one question which has been repeated since a lot of the audience is Pakistanis living abroad. They're asking, what can we do? What can the Pakistani academic diaspora do to help academia in Pakistan? So any thoughts and ideas?
Collaborative research, have collaborative research opportunities so that we can, and also we face a lot of problems in getting our thesis evaluated. People are not willing to evaluate, and we have to go through a rigorous exercise to find some academics who are willing to do it. I think and now HEC has said that Pakistani born people can't, even in the diaspora population, cannot evaluate thesis. It is not recognized. I ask you. But they can find people for us. It's a very major concern. And also, I mean, in respect of publication, joint collaborative research, publishing, that kind of a thing. When we had the link programs, I think they were very beneficial for the university. The link programs served a lot of people to broaden their vision. You just need to go into a real academic culture to understand what it is, and very few people have that opportunity. So I think that is one area which needs to be explored by HEC to establish links, academic links with other universities, and also to facilitate collaborative research.
Indeed, yes, I think that's a great point, that the existing links HEC have been often to get students to do degrees abroad, and more research links that have happened in the past need to be resurrected. So that's an action item of faculty, exactly, of faculty for joint publications. And that's the role APF can try to play.
Faculty exchange, people coming in from there and teaching here, and people going from here to participate in their courses.
Exactly. Yep. And I think now with the security situation having improved, we hope we can do that. And APF can hopefully play a facilitative role there.
There is another organization called, I think, the American Institute of Pakistan Studies, AIPS.
Yes.
And
yes.
There was a very, very good collaborative program with them, where in one case, they ran workshops. And I'm talking now detailed 2-week workshop for, let's say, 8 to 10 PhD scholars in a specific discipline. Could be urban planning, or could be, Eastern philosophy or whatever. And then the international scholars came and they worked at a deeper level. They worked at the formulation of the thesis, the setting of the question, the kind of questionnaires they would be having, or the analysis, laying out the structure and working with them. And then once you build that bond, then that continues over email, long-term basis, and you can actually work with faculty and graduate a few top scholars. They need guidance and they need support. This can be individual level, it can be institutional level, formal, informal, participating in a curriculum development, participating in quality assurance or evaluation systems, for example, PhD programs and mechanisms to assess. So, you need, of course, a framework within which quality assurance is taking place. And then you need to have external academics come in. I mean, LUMS has great examples of external academics working with it to define the future, to help with the current programs, assessments, etc.
Great idea. Yep, definitely. And AIPS, the American Institute of Pakistan Studies, we have been in touch with them closely. They are confined by their mandate only for humanities and social science, so they don't work in the natural sciences domain. But I think there are ways in which we can still form similar opportunities for the natural sciences as well. Dr. Ahmad, over to you for any suggestions there.
Yeah, I'll make 3 suggestions and build on what my colleagues just said. First of all, I would say this as someone who was with the Canadian diaspora for a long time, that, and we've been neighbors and good neighbors. So I would say this to my friends or colleagues who are listening, that seeing is believing. So, I had all these perceptions about Pakistan, and having born and raised here, always wanted to come back, but I had this hesitation. You talked about, the safety factor and so on. But a lot of them just went away when I came, and seeing is believing. So I think one of the things I'd say is, first of all, it's a really beautiful country. If you don't want to come here for academic reasons, come here just for the geography. You'll never see a country like this anywhere on earth. And I'm talking about someone who grew up here and is discovering still the beauty and magnificence of this country. So that, I think, has been severely underreported and underexperienced. So I would encourage you to discover Pakistan in that sense. But beyond that, coming back to the higher education, what I would say is that, we often think we need help, we need this, we need. Actually, we have a lot to offer. One of the things we have to offer that very few countries do is really data. We have primary data, raw data on just about anything you want to do. I mean, climate change is the subject of the world right now. Everybody's talking about climate change. You want to know about climate change, you come to Pakistan and you'll see every microclimate you can imagine. You will see the impact of that climate in terms of how would you deal with pollution, how would you deal with our scarcity in waters, with the Himalayas, the Indus flowing from the north all the way down to the ports in Karachi. It's just a living laboratory. Now, you want to study disease, you're going to find all the diseases in the world are hatched in South Asia, one place or the other, Southeast Asia, Asia. This is the kind of data humanity needs. This is why the West is looking at the East. We have a lot to give in terms of providing science, engineering, applied disciplines, and I would say in social sciences, or you pick law, any of the academic fields and areas, you've got some great data here, great people who are interested to work with you and really hungry. So that takes me to the third point. And that third point is about impact. A lot of us academics who have come back to Pakistan is for the reason why we started in this business in the first place. We wanted to make a difference. Now, you know, we did well in at least I thought I did, you know, okay in my area. I was a full professor in finance. Then I went ahead and did some administrative work in a couple of different universities. But, you know, I sort of realized this is it. I'm not going to go any further here. Even if I became a vice chancellor in a Canadian university, the impact I would have in a country like ours here in Pakistan is just, you know, the multiplier is humongous. So I would say if you want to make a difference in other people's lives, socially, economically, commercially, you choose your area. This is the wild east, if that is such a phrase that we can use. And, you know, people have to come here to believe that this is for real. And don't wait and think about an exchange program. Make a bigger commitment because it'll benefit you as much as it'll benefit Pakistanis.
Very well said.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. Yeah, the Wild East is very welcoming. And just to wrap up, then the last question I'll pose, and some of this has been perhaps addressed as well, is around how to stop capital flight of human capital flight of our academics, the migration aspect, and maybe not to even stop it, but to find a way to make it more rewarding and cyclical, and having migration flows provide some more positive feedback for the country. Are there some specific suggestions with reference to especially the investment that HEC makes, for example, in scholarships, but then has trouble retaining people? You know, they have the bonds, they try to have mechanisms whereby they can get people back, but then they still try to find a way to go. Is there any thought on that you would want to specifically, just to sharpen it a bit more on some of your points there?
Yes, the primary thing is that academics work, if you give them respect and if you give them an environment in which there is growth and prosperity. Yes, there is necessity for some financial benefits also, but it is respect and the space for growth that is primary. For that, we have to fix the governance and management system of universities. We have got to address those issues, and the system that the world applies for that process to occur across a countrywide spectrum is that of accreditation. So we need a Bologna type system of accreditation of programs and institutions.
Great response in terms of, you know, mainstreaming and getting things so that there is this both institutional attraction and the financial incentives, which to some degree have improved, but need to be augmented perhaps also through hybrid career opportunities where people can also engage in consultancies, others with greater ease as well. So we will have to wrap up soon. And there's been a lively debate among the audience members with the panels. So it's been really fantastic. Our goal with this webinar was to make sure we are solutions oriented. We didn't want to just lament the past. And I'm really pleased that all of the panelists have been so constructive. And it's not been about, you know, gossiping here and there. It's been just direct, focusing on solutions. And that's really the spirit. I feel very encouraged as a guy who has 3 passports, but values my green passport probably the most. It's wonderful to have you all engaged so eloquently. Please do keep in touch with APF, keep in touch with the efforts the Diaspora is making. And with that, I'll turn it over to Shamila to close the event. We will continue, of course, to engage online once the recording goes up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saleem, and to all of our esteemed guests. And yes, it was very lively. And I think it's a good example of, you know, that we have more conversations to have about this. And so I look forward to having future webinars and delving deeper into all the different issues that were highlighted today. So we will share as soon as possible the link to the video once we've got it up and running. And please do sign up on the APF listserv, watch our videos on our YouTube channel. You can find it if you just search for American Pakistan Foundation on YouTube. That's where you'll find the APF Research Spotlight. So with that, everyone have a great day, evening, wherever you are. Thank you, Saleem, again, and take care. Be well. Khudafis.
Thank you.
Thank you.